Thanks for tuning in. This is episode number 3 of our Archers and Arrows summer content. Over the next 10 to 15 minutes, we're gonna discuss having a coach's mindset when it comes to your parenting. Unfortunately, a lot of moms and a lot of dads right now, we have neglected our responsibility to train and to coach our kids. We've assumed, and you know what happens when we assume, we've assumed that our kids are gonna get the training that they need, that they desperately need, that they're gonna get that training somewhere else, that school's gonna teach them, that church is gonna do it, that they're just gonna figure it out, and we just leave it up to chance that they're gonna turn out the way we want, that they're gonna learn the character traits, that they're gonna learn the spiritual things that they need to know. And leaving it up to chance. They say that chance is a lousy teacher and an even worse guide. And I can't think of a worse thing for us to do than to leave our kids' development, especially in the things of the Bible and spiritual things, up to chance. So I want us all to embrace a coach's mindset. As a parent, you are many things to your kids, but I think one of the most important things you can be is a coach. And since I've adopted this concept of being a coach, it has transformed my parenting. And during those tough moments of parenting, it has given me a new frame, a new lens to view my actions through. And so I hope that it can do the same thing for you today. Also, we're gonna take a few minutes and discuss what this week looks like. If you're following along my rhythm and what I'm doing this summer, then that means this week we are going to review with our kids. We're going to teach our kids about the 3 enemies we have in our faith walk. It's important that we understand that our enemies aren't flesh and blood, right? Ephesians 5, when it talks about the armor of God, it says that we're not at war, we're not at battle with flesh and blood, aka our enemies aren't people. It's the spiritual realm behind it. It's the devil, the flesh, and the world. So we're gonna make sure we talk to our kids and we start training them that the bullies at school aren't their enemy. Yeah, we don't have to be best friends with them. We can absolutely have boundaries and there's maturity there, but we're starting to lay a frame that our enemies are the devil, our flesh, and the ways of the world. And so we're going to do this in an age-appropriate way. If your child's 3 years old, maybe you're not doing this. But I think that if they're 5, 6, 7 years or older, we can start teaching them these concepts. How deep you go into this matter is going to be dependent on their maturity and where you feel like they're at. You may keep it super high level at this point, but the idea is we're teaching them and training them. And I think a lot of you might be raising your hand and saying, well, 5, 6, 7 years old, isn't that a little too young? If we look back at Jewish culture in the times of the Old Testament, the kids were expected to understand, to know, to comprehend, and even to memorize large portions of the Old Testament, which is pretty graphic and pretty violent at times. So I think we underestimate what our kids can handle. And so let's push ourselves, let's challenge ourselves to teach them and to train them in the things of the Lord. I've come to the belief that we underdo it when it comes to the things of the Lord and we overexpose them to the things of the world. So let's make sure we're doing our job. And then number 3, we're going to take a few moments to discuss what next week is going to look like. So let's dive into it. And we're going to start with the coach's mindset. I've brought this verse up before, but this is one of the most important verses. If you're going to memorize a verse this summer or this week, this is a great one to start with. It's Proverbs 22:6, and it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it. And a lot of people love to focus and hang on the second part of the verse in this promise that they think that, hey, whatever, I'm not even going to go into the second part right now. But I want to focus on the first part, which is train them in the way they should go. And so as you're thinking as a coach comes to practice with a practice plan. They understand how they want their practice to unfold so that they can take their team to a new level. Say in basketball, if they want to coach their team to a new defense, a new strategy, well, they're going to do drills. They're going to have specific conversations in sessions of that practice so that they can start molding their team and preparing their team for that. They're training them. The same thing with the military. You train you take a civilian basically at the beginning when they sign up for the military, and you train them physically, mentally, emotionally, so that they can handle the military. Then you teach them strategy, you teach them how to use their weapons. It's all training, it's all intentional. And so the Bible is using the same type of language that we should train up. AKA, there should be some intentionality to our raising of our kids. And so as a coach of your kids, it's important that you have some intentionality and some thought there. And so this is very, a lot of you will say, this is just big picture. I want you to make this super practical so that when you're in those very hard moments of parenting where your kids are being extremely disobedient, you feel like you're about to lose your cool, and this could be, a pivotal moment or a moment that your kids remember and shape them. I want you to put yourself and put your coach's hat on. Literally, in that moment, just remind yourself, okay, I am many things, but I'm also a coach, and right now, I need to be a coach. And I think that lens, that very practical lens, will help you make wiser, better decisions as a parent, because the goal is not perfection from our kids. The goal is that long term, that they love Jesus, that they know the ways of Jesus, and that hopefully they're following him. The goal is not momentary, peace for ourselves. A lot of us, we just want our kids to behave in this moment so that we can have a glimpse of peace, so that it's quiet, so things go well, so whatever. It all comes down to just a lot of peace. Where in the reality, our goal is long-term, long-term, why can I not get the word? That things are going well in the long term, okay? It's not short-term satisfaction or short-term pleasure, it's long-term satisfaction. I don't know why I'm tripping over my words all of a sudden, but anyway. Ephesians 6:4, we've gone through this as well. Fathers, don't exasperate your children. Don't burn them out. Don't burden them so heavily that they resent you, right? Don't exasperate your children. Instead, then bring them up in the training. There's that training word again, and the instruction of the Lord. So these are just two scriptures that you can memorize that I think would be helpful as you're laying this foundation. A lot of dads, if they've spent any time in the church, they may know scriptures like Proverbs 19:18, where it says, discipline your children for in that there is hope. Do not be a willing party to their death. AKA, if you don't discipline your kids, then you're doing them a disservice. You're leading them towards spiritual death. Proverbs 22:15, folly, right? Folly or disobedience is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline will drive it far from them, aka discipline. When you discipline your kids, it is driving out disobedience. In Proverbs 23, I believe, let me look at my notes, 23:13, do not withhold discipline, for if you punish them with the rod, they will not die. Punish them with the rod and save them from death. AKA, parents, it is up to us to discipline our kids, because if we don't discipline them, then we are leading them astray due to our inaction. And so there comes this tension of, some people will grasp that and say, man, I'm going to just discipline them. And they lose the heart of parenting and coaching them. And I believe what the Bible says is true, is we do need to value discipline. But we either do nothing and we let TikTok raise our kids, and we let TV and YouTube and school, and we just let everybody else raise our kid, or we take it so seriously that everything leads to discipline and punishment, and it's just wrath. And I think that we can honor the scriptures, we can follow the scriptures, and also have a little bit warmer heart and make sure that we're getting to the true nature of what God's calling us to, which is to raise up, to train up our kids. And our kids aren't going to want to hear what we have to say if all we ever do is discipline them harshly. So I'm asking as a parent, and I'm challenging myself at times too, that let's make sure we have the right mindset, because our mindset is going to dictate our thoughts. which is going to dictate our words, which is going to dictate kind of the path that we lay out for our kids. So I know that this may seem silly to you, but we've got to make sure we have the right mindset. And once again, this is very practical because I know the scriptures decently. I know the scriptures about being a parent and disciplining and raising your kids. And I can get so, I have this perfectionist mindset that my kids do something wrong, then I have to discipline them. I have to discipline them. And, all of a sudden it becomes this really, it could be this unpleasant experience where I expect perfection, which is not realistic. My Heavenly Father knows I'm going to mess up, and He's not sitting there waiting to just berate me every time I mess up. He wants to coach me. He does want better for me, but He also loves me and has a father's heart that He wants to just kind of pull me along and pick me up and have a conversation with me and coach me. And so I think that heart of a coach, that mindset of a coach, is much more relevant to the way that God works than just this father that's constantly sitting there berating their kids every time they mess up. That isn't the heart of the discipline that God has for us and has for, He wants us to have for our kids. And so I've got a couple very, very practical things that I've stumbled across over the years that have helped me in my parenting, and I want to pass them on because there are people that are further along, they're wiser than me. I don't want to act like I have it all together because I certainly don't. This is Jeremy Pryor. He has written books with Jefferson Bethke. He's got a podcast. He's done a lot of really good productive work for the kingdom. He's not just some random guy that's got a couple tweets out there and no. He has a very solid background foundation in teaching these things and living these things with his family. He says here, when a child disobeys, ask, did I train them in this area? If the answer is no, then you should endure patiently. If you just started training them, then repeat what's expected. If you have trained them, discipline consistently. Man, this is beautiful because a lot of us, we get frustrated with our kids and we think, oh man, they're just being disobedient, and they don't respect me, right? They don't respect me. They're just being bad. They don't respect me. When the first question I think we should ask is, have I even trained them to do the right thing? Why am I expecting them to do the right thing if I haven't trained them to do the right thing? I think of like parents at Target and their kid is acting bad and being disobedient, at the checkout line. And there's three seconds of silence. And so to fill that silence, they start, playing or being loud or whatever. And the mom gets mad at this disobedience. When the reality is after 3 seconds of silence, she pulls out her phone to distract her when the kid's just distracting himself and she just doesn't like the way he's doing it. It's this kind of hypocrisy we can have at times to our parenting when we haven't trained our kids that, hey, in these moments, here is how we should act. In these moments of tension with your sibling, here's how we should act. Not everything is blatant disobedience just to get under your skin. A lot of times we haven't trained them, here's how you should think about this situation. Here's how we should act in this situation. So if we haven't trained them, then we shouldn't expect obedience. If we just started training them in a specific area, then let's patiently repeat what we expect. Here's our standard. Here's what the Bible says. Here's how our family handles this. And then if we have trained them, and this is something that, hey, we've been training them for months and months and months or years, and then all of a sudden they know the standard. They know what's expected. And this maybe at this point is just disobedience. Then we should discipline them consistently. And that word consistently is very important. If we're not consistent with our discipline and how we respond and our tone, then all of a sudden, then we just become this volatile parent that is just, our discipline is just based on how we feel in the moment, rather than having a consistent pattern to our discipline. So that's a great train of thought. Have I trained them to do the right thing? If the answer is no, then it's more on you than it is on them. If you just started, then patiently remind them, patiently coach them, right? Think of a coach. If you just started teaching them how to do a layup and they miss the layup, you patiently help them practice it again. Maybe you pull your child aside and said, hey, remember, how do we respond when our sibling hits us? Do we hit them back? No. And we practice the situation. Let's practice that again. I use that language with my own kids now, as I view things as a practice. If I'm gonna coach, then I use coach's language. Okay, hey, that didn't go so well. How should we do that next time? When Johnny says this to you, tell me what you would say next time. Let's practice the language, let's coach them, and then let's help them move on. So this is a great framework. I love that. And I think that's a great framework for practical things, but I also think that's a great framework for spiritual matters. When we're talking about tension and conflict and all sorts of things. When it comes to this summer, we're doing training in practical things as well, not just character building, not just spiritual things, but also very practical things. How do I change the tire on the car? How do I use a hammer and a screwdriver? So those are very practical things. So we need to coach them in character development. We need to coach them in spiritual matters, which is kind of what we just talked about a little bit. But we also need to coach them and have that type of mindset when it comes to very practical things. So I want you to think that confidence comes through competence. Our kids aren't going to have any confidence in those practical things if we haven't built up competence. And a lot of us as parents, once again, haven't matured. We're just boys in men's bodies. We don't have any confidence because we don't have competence. Why is it that when we drop off our car to get the oil change, we feel, we have no confidence? Well, it's because there's no competence there. We have no idea of the language that they're using, the parts that they're talking about. We have no competence when it comes to the things of our car, so therefore we have no confidence. So guys, for our kids, when we're teaching them these very practical things, it's our job to help coach them and build up their confidence. Just like a great coach is going to run through drills and is going to do the exercises over and over again to build up confidence. You do that by building up their competence. And guys, once again, the idea is we run through these drills, we do this practice not for the expectation that they're gonna do it one time and all of a sudden be perfect. No, we teach them, we let them practice, they mess up, we teach them again, we practice, when they do it again, they might mess up. This is the long game. Remember, our whole mentality is the long game. The coach doesn't start day one of practice and say, you better be perfect by tomorrow. No, the championship is usually months and months and months in the future. For us as coaches, our championship is when they're 18, 25, 30. It is years and decades away. So we have to have the long game here. And the worst thing we can do is burn out our kids and exasperate them after a day, a week, a month, because we're demanding perfection. No, most of us, we just don't have the patience. It's mostly on us. We need the patience as a coach to understand that I am building them. And a lot of times it's a step forward, 2 steps back, a step forward, 2 steps back. But as a coach, my job isn't to just then give up. It's to have patience and then to go back to the basics and to teach them. But I digress. You can tell I'm passionate about this stuff, guys. But when it comes to these practical things, as men specifically, when we're talking about our boys, daughters might be a little different here, but as men, we're very hands-on. We need experience doing things. There's an African proverb that says, I heard, I forget. I see, I remember. I do, I understand. And I think this applies to our daughters too, but man, especially to our boys. You can sit there and you can tell them about something, but a lot of times they're gonna forget. But if we can bring visual things to it, we can help them see it. Hey, this is how you hammer a nail. You tell them about it, okay, maybe they're gonna remember it, maybe not. But if you show them how to do it, they see it, okay, I think I get it. But then if you give them the hammer and the nail and they do it, they might mess up, they might hit their thumb, but they're gonna start understanding. And that's gonna lead to deep remembering, deeper understanding. So as parents, guys, I think it's invaluable that we take this seriously and we start building up their competence so that they have more confidence. And as a parent, I think we have too low of expectations for our kids and what they can do when it comes to spiritual matters, when it comes to character development, but when it also comes to very practical things. Vacuuming the house, doing the dishes, setting the table for dinner, helping with the yard work, you name it, we have too low of expectations for our kids. And all of a sudden, we treat them like a pet. They just can live in the house, we feed them, we give them water, but they have to do nothing to add value to the team. As a coach, you need to think of your family as a team. And they are teammates, team members, helping with the family mission and the family work. We have too low of expectations for our kids. So here's a matrix. Once again, I want you to think about these things more. A lot of us we give our kids high support. We give them high support, but we don't have any sort of demand. We help them tie their shoes, but we demand them do nothing. We high support, low demand leads to coddled, babied kids. These are the kids that when they're 13 years old, when they're 20 years old, when they're 25, 30 years old, they don't know how to do anything because nobody's ever demanded much from them. And their parents have always given them high support. These are coddled baby kids. And unfortunately, there's been many books. This is not AC's thoughts on the matter. These are other thoughts on other more esteemed people's thoughts of we have a coddled generation. It's because we haven't demanded anything of our kids and we've given them all the support in the world. Low support, high demand is shameful military family cultures, right? Where there's the dictator parents, they have high demands, you do this, you do that, but they don't support them. This goes to exactly what I'm saying is there's high demand, do this, but there's no teaching. There's no coaching. That's the low support piece of you expect your kids to know how to set the table, but you've never taught them how to do it. You just expect them to know how. You expect and you demand your kids to behave in public, but you've never taught them, how to carry on conversation. You've never taught them how to have manners, but you expect it, right? That's a shameful dictator type of family culture, not healthy and happy. Unfortunately, we see these types of families and we say, you know what, man, look at those 13-year-old kids at dinner. They are super respectful. They don't, and it's like, well, it's not really a healthy family culture. The kids don't say anything because it's been beaten into them that they don't say anything. Just because they're behaving at the dinner table, they don't carry on conversation. Their heart is detached from it. It's a very dictator military type of family. And I don't think that that's what we should be after either. I think it's a high support, high demand. We have high expectations for our kids, but we give them high support, right? I expect my kids to clean their rooms, but I am teaching them how to clean the rooms. I don't just clean the room for them. That would be high support, low demand. No, I expect them to keep the room clean. I expect them to set the table. I expect them to help with the yard work. Yes, I have high demands, but I'm also high support. I will be right there beside them, doing it with them. I will be right there teaching them. And then as they start to comprehend it more and more, my support will slowly wane. And then they mess up. Okay, I'll jump back in. Let's get shoulder to shoulder. A coach's mindset, high support, high demand. And I think that that's the sweet spot. So sit down with your wife, sit down with your husband and talk through what is our current structure. If we had to be honest about the current structure of our family, where do we fall? Which one of these rows do we fall in? And if you're one of these two, then I would highly suggest talking about what would it look like for our family to be high support, high demand. All right, last thing here, guys. This is gold. I think that a lot of you men, maybe you're like, you know what, AC, this whole summer content stuff that you're getting at of teaching and training my kids, man, I really agree with you. But it goes back to I don't practically know how to do these things. I don't know how to teach it to them. I've never had a teacher's mentality or a coach's mentality. What does that look like? I want to do it, but I don't know how. Here is a great teaching rhythm that I came across in a book I read. And I think that this is super practical, especially for teaching our sons, but this applies to the daughters as well. Of whenever you're teaching your kids something new, write this down, have it in your pocket, have it in an index card in your wallet. I don't care, or memorize it, or just internalize it, whatever you need to do. But it's I do, my kid watches, and then we talk about it. So very practically, I taught my kids how to use a hammer and nails the other day. So what did I do? The first thing I did was I used the hammer and the nail. I nailed it in, they watched me do it, and then I talked to them about it. Hey, this is how I held the hammer. I put the nail there, I held it in place. This is what I was doing, and then I removed my hand, right? I talked to them through it. And then I did it, they helped me, right? Hey, now you hold the hammer or you hold the nail. And then it was kind of a joint thing. We talk about it. And then they do it, the kid does it, I help them, we talk about it. So now we flip places. The kid does most of the work, you're there to help, and you talk about it. The kid does it, you watch, and then we talk about it. And then the kid does it, and someone else watches. I need to put better language in there for the kid, for the parent. I'm sorry. That's kind of confusing. But you see that mainly it starts with you do the work, they're watching. So you do a lot of it, they do very little. You talk about it, and then over time, you start flipping places of you do less of the work, they do more, and now they're doing all of it, and you're doing nothing. And then at some point, somebody else is watching. Hey, you go inside, bring your wife outside, and then let your kid teach your wife how to use a hammer and nail. Now all of a sudden, they're doing it themselves, and then they're teaching and practicing with somebody else. Man, that's gold right there. So that's a very practical rhythm to teach and to train the kids. So that was all bullet point number 1. If you're following along my summer content, or let me pause and say this. If you're not doing my summer content as far as the spiritual realm, you can go ahead and pause the video, you're done. I appreciate your time. But if you're like, hey, I want to teach my kids more of the spiritual things, I don't really know what to teach them, AC, I'm just going to kind of follow along with whatever you're teaching your kids, great. This week with my kids, I'm talking about the 3 enemies we have, which is the devil, the flesh, and the world. And this is straight from the Bible. The early church, I should say, while it was very peaceful, nonviolent, type of pacifist type of church, they were very aggressive with the 3 enemies that they would call the devil, the flesh, and the world. And we can see this. Jesus talks about the devil. So Paul talks a lot about the flesh. They both kind of talk about the ways of the world. And those are our enemies. And so conceptually, why am I teaching my kids this? Well, I'm going to talk to them about the armor of God. I'm going to talk to them about how God fights for them, how they're a part of the battle, right? Once again, I'm kind of pulling at the heartstrings of my young kids who love to battle, right? That's the part of a boy. Well, great. Well, you're a part of this battle. God fights for you, but you're also a part of the battle. Well, why do we need to battle? Right? That's a great question. Well, I'm laying the foundation that we need to battle because we have an enemy. And the enemy is not your bully at school. Your enemy is the devil, the flesh, and the ways of the world. So let's make sure we have the right enemy. And so that's what we're going to talk about this week. I've got a PDF for you that you can follow along. It's got a couple conversation/devotional prompts for you. The word devotional it can be very overwhelming to a dad of like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know what this means. I want you to start thinking of this as you're having a conversation with your kid. The scriptures point out that this should be more normalized, right? It shouldn't be awkward or weird for us to talk about God or the Bible. We need to normalize this in our families and in our houses. So let's just have conversations. Well, I give you a couple prompts, I give you a couple bullet points, some scripture, some questions to ask your kid. I want you to do the work. I want you to do it. I don't want you to just read from a piece of paper. No, I want you to have a conversation with your kid, but I'm gonna give you some prompts, I'm gonna give you some tools so you have what you need to get the job done, okay? I also give you some family activities you can do, some ways that the mom can get involved if the mom wants to get involved. I want this to be a family thing. So I will give you all that. Follow me on Instagram, handle is AC_Stinson. Follow me on Instagram, DM me and say, give me your email. Unfortunately, right now I don't have a website. I'm trying to figure out how to get this to people. That's my fault. I need to make this easier. But right now, if you're interested in that, just follow me on Instagram, DM me, and send me your email, and I will email it to you for free. There's no strings attached. I want you to do this with your kids. Next week, we're going to talk about how God fights for us. So I'm planting the seed of, right now we're talking about the 3 enemies. Where we're going next week with our kids is God fights for us. And I'm going to help you walk through that with your kids. And then eventually we're going to get to the armor of God, and we're going to talk about the belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness, all of that type of stuff. That's where we're going this summer. But thank you for tuning in. I hope you start to have that mindset of a coach with your kids, and I pray that this blessed you. Be full.